Have you ever thought that you crafted the perfect script, the perfect story, the perfect presentation, the perfect pitch, the perfect words, only to feel like it just doesn't land with your audience or listener? And you might feel frustrated, confused, maybe quite annoyed that you thought you'd done everything right, but no one seems to be engaging. And it could be that they just aren't listening. You literally see people around you when they're just on their phones and no one's listening. Or maybe they're interrupting you and they just don't seem to respect you or be interested in what you're talking about. If that resonates with you, I want to talk about what's really going on here today and how you can begin to transform this. But before I get going, my name is Anuska Taylor. I'm an experienced voice coach, been doing this for over 15 years now. And I'm also a Jungian depth coach using the profound work of Swiss psychologist Carl Jung to really help clients have a profound transformation in how they communicate, how they show up, and as a byproduct of that, how the voice actually sounds, feels, and functions. And so my philosophy is it's an inside job first and foremost, because your voice never lies. It is always communicating everything that you are thinking, feeling, and believing about yourself at the deepest level. So if you just work on the vocal exercises, you're really cutting off half of your power. And when people just focus on vocal exercises, that's when you'll find you'll reach a plateau or you'll just end up going back to your old habits, because you have to address what's unconsciously driving your voice emotionally. So if you're ready to go deeper with your voice or you like this kind of deeper content, then please do consider subscribing and also check out all the links below if you're interested in working with me, whether it's in one of my online courses or privately. So have you heard this expression before? It's not what you say, it's how you say it. My mum used to say this to me all the time, and there is so much truth in this. But sadly, most people today, particularly with the advent of AI, where you can literally get AI to write you a script, write you a story, there's so much focus on the words and so little focus on the delivery and the expression of those words. But it makes sense because actually focusing on the script is something you probably feel you have more control over than how my voice functions, how I actually express this, how I show up in my body, in my voice when I deliver this. And that's probably going to require a bit more training. You can't get AI to do that for you. So I do get that it's easier, but I also think it's just very much what people talk about. It's getting it's crafting the perfect script, crafting the perfect words. But what I'm going to share with you today is it's actually more about your energy that is going to impact whether people engage with you or not, because your energy will impact your voice, and then your voice is either going to bring your words alive or ensure that no one listens, because your energy never lies, ever. And this is energy both vocally, but also physically in your body. Now, obviously, nowadays, a lot of people do meetings and things over Zoom, over Teams, on Google Meets. So you don't necessarily really even see much of people's bodies anymore. It might just be this. Some people turn their videos off. So more and more often now, the voice is becoming even more important because we're often not doing anything in person anymore. But if you are doing it in person, then of course your body language is really important as well. But it's all connected because your voice is a full body instrument. So whether people can see your body or not, it's all going to impact the voice. But your energy is where you really need to put your focus, because that is going to dictate how your voice comes out and how you're ultimately received. It's like a domino effect. So it almost doesn't matter what you say if your energy is off. If there's a conflict between your energy and maybe there's a lot of hesitation and fear and doubt and negativity in your energy, it almost doesn't matter what words you say, because that is what people are reading. Consciously and unconsciously, that is what we're all reading into everyone. You're reading that into me right now. I'm reading that into anyone that I engage with on a day-to-day level. I'm reading their energy. So let me give you a couple of examples of how this might show up, and I'm sure one of them might relate to you. So maybe you've been in a social situation and you run into someone that you haven't seen in a while, that maybe there's an unspoken agreement that you don't really like each other. for whatever reason. And then you see each other, and then the person comes over and goes, "Hi, Anuska, it's so great to see you. How are you?" And you can see it's just all so fake because they don't actually mean anything that they're saying, but they feel they have to say it because it's socially acceptable. So we've all been there, and to a greater or lesser extent, we all do that because we are social creatures and we do have to play the game to some extent. But I think if you're living there a lot and you are being very inauthentic in your expression, then that is why people aren't going to engage with you. Because in that scenario, I know that you're not really being genuine because I know that you don't particularly like me or whatever the situation is. And so I know there's instantly this sort of inauthenticity in our communication. And so I'm not going to want to engage with you. So you might find this as well, not just in my next example, but in your social life where you just find it hard to engage with people. And it's because there's a mismatch between your energy and what you're saying. Another example might be if you're in a business scenario and you're pitching your ideas to maybe potential clients or to your team, and you maybe have some hesitation around, can I really do this? Am I really good enough to be here? Yet you're like, no, no, but if I just get the right words, if I just say the right thing, if I just get all the facts, figures, and data, and I get all the correct words out, then people will think I'm amazing. And so you go to deliver it and it just falls flat. And maybe it can show up in many different ways. Maybe just people just look bored, they disengage, they talk over you, they're just not listening. Maybe they are even more kind of extreme, perhaps they're very openly disrespectful. And so you are left confused and thinking, well, hold on a minute, but I said all the right things. I've got this great idea, but it's just not landing. And what typically we will do is we will blame the external. So we'll blame the people in the meeting. Well, they just don't get it. It's their problem, their loss, or they're not very nice anyway. Or the person in my social situation, like, oh, I didn't like her anyway, didn't like him anyway. So we tend to brush it off, and this is what the ego does. It projects everything out because I cannot possibly look at what this is reflecting in me. And so, this is my first invitation to you. If you find yourself in a situation like this, particularly if it is a pattern where there's just this disengagement socially or professionally with people, whether you are trying to build relationships or whether you're trying to pitch your product or services or ideas, and you just feel it's not landing, you need to step back and look at your own energy and where is your mind? Where is your energy around this? Because your energy will never lie. It's always emanating what you really feel, think, and believe about yourself. And so, from that place, then, as I said, the energy will drive your voice. It will drive the tone. It will drive the power or lack thereof. And so, depending on the situation that we're talking about here, the likelihood is in some way your voice is going to be shut down. Now, depending on what's really behind this, it could be shut down in the sense of your voice is very quiet, you mumble, it's very monotonous and boring sounding, so no one's going to engage with you anyway. Or it could be shut down in the other way, where the voice is very pushed, very strained, very forced, very loud. So it can be both sides. It's not just about being quiet. You know, I've seen this a lot with people where they've potentially got a louder, bigger, more forced voice, but they struggle to engage with people one on one. Because again, the energy behind it is, I don't actually feel that secure. I don't actually feel all that, but I'm using this voice almost as a protection. So we've got to get really, really honest with ourselves about what's going on. And so the first step is to become aware of, is this a pattern? When does this show up? How does this show up? How do I feel when this shows up? And just start to notice if there's a pattern to what is happening. Because what's more important is your intention, your conviction, and your certainty around what you're saying. Because if you are really in your true power and you are certain and you have got that conviction behind what you're saying, whether it's personal or professional, then that is what you're going to see back. The world is always going to reflect back to you what you're really feeling, thinking, and believing about yourself. So then when you combine that with the perfect words, that's when you are incredibly powerful. Because I'm not going to lie, when people are very articulate and they can express themselves very clearly, that is very, very, very powerful. And that is where we all want to be, just super articulate. But there's no point having the gift of the gab with words if your energy lets you down, if your voice lets you down. And so, as I said, it really starts from how you feel about yourself. So you've got to get very, very honest with yourself, start to look at the patterns, and start to be honest with yourself around using the work situation. And this is a question I ask a lot of my private clients. So, whatever the situation is, let's take the business situation. So, what's the payoff for people ignoring me? What's the payoff for people disrespecting me? There is always an emotional payoff to the ego. Now, it might not make logical sense to your adult human mind, but at some point, this has served you. And there's always a payoff, but it could be very unconscious. So you just have to start to peel back the layers. So remember, first of all, it's starting to notice if there's a pattern and becoming very curious and start to sort of see, where does this pattern show up? What kinds of people? And then it is about, what is the payoff for me experiencing this? What is the payoff for people ignoring me? What is the payoff for people disrespecting me? What is the payoff for people not wanting to connect with me? There is always a payoff. And just as a little hint, is probably something to do with vulnerability. It is probably something to do with really being seen and heard. And that's why we have to do this work, because that is going to 100% impact your voice, because that energy, that doubt, that fear, that insecurity, that negativity is going to drive your voice and ultimately infuse your words. And then you're going to wonder why no one's interested. So I hope that that has been helpful. I'd love to know in the comments if you've had any experiences of this, and also if you start to put some of this into practice, what your observations are. And just remember, with all of this is not about beating yourself up. This is about curiosity and awareness. So it's not now you're like, oh, well, it's just all my fault, so I'm such a terrible person. It's not that, because this is your ego. Remember, this isn't the truth of who you are. This is your conditioning playing out. This is your programming playing out. So it is not who you are. But in order to actually transform and to create what you truly want, you have to see the conditioning, see the programming, and begin to dismantle it, and not allow it to actually run your life anymore. And that is what I do with my private clients, because this is shadow work. This is big, and it's very difficult to do by yourself. But I'm giving you a couple of pointers today. So let me know how you go in the comments. But until next time, I will see you on next week's video.